Good evening, sir. Thanks very much for your time. At that briefing, which took place over a week ago here in Johannesburg, the Minister of Basic Education, Angie, made it abundantly clear that as a department, they do not believe that they should be dealing with school infrastructure. She feels strongly that that is a job that should be given to other people, and they should focus on teaching and learning.
Look, I think there's a bit of hypocrisy coming from the minister there, because when we were sitting in the venue where she was announcing the release of the matric results earlier this year, she mentioned and spoke a lot about how the social wage issues that relate to education are part and parcel of creating a democratic education system which is equitable, equal, and of quality. And school infrastructure falls under that realm. So many times she's come out and saying things just of that nature. And I think her biggest worry or contention around infrastructure as a DBE commitment is around the fact that she feels powerless to be able to mandate or inundate other government entities or departments to be able to work together in the building of schools or delivering school infrastructure to our rural and urban provinces. But the funny thing is that they've spent a long time fighting equal education in court. And last year in June, or July rather, we had a positive judgment from the High Court in Bishop by Judge Msizi. And she was saying, look, we have to fix some loopholes that exist in a regulation called the Norms and Standards for School Infrastructure that create this mismatch between not working together between government departments to make sure and fulfill the rights of school infrastructure, but also maintain and protect the rights for learners to learn in a conducive environment. And what happened is that in closing of these loopholes in July, Judge Msizi was saying the powers vested now in you as the DBE and Minister Angie Motshekga and the 9 MECs to be able to mandate and work together with other departments to fulfill. So it's a state compulsion at this point to fulfill the mandate of providing infrastructure for schools in our country. When we still have over 3,800 schools that only have pit latrines as a source of sanitation, it's worrying that we still have to fight with the minister.
Was it not precisely...
To further exacerbate the matter.
Was it not precisely because she feels disempowered that she opposed yours and other organizations' applications? In other words, she's not necessarily arguing against the provision of this infrastructure and, of course, the history that comes with where we are today, and especially insofar as it affects people from previously disadvantaged background.
I mean, look, that can't be what we work off. Yeah, there are learners and teachers today that are learning in schools in critical conditions. And what we're saying, beyond what she feels, the disempowerment, as you noted, there's a regulation she's been fighting in court, all the way to the Constitutional Court, which got thrown out as an appeal, by the way, that gives her the power to be able to do that. And when you say state, it also compels then the president to do that with her. And when you think about something like the SAFE initiative, for example, that's come from the president, mandating Angie Motshekga and her ministry to be able to do a school audit to find out how many schools are actually in desperate need of these kinds of sort of infrastructure resources and things of that nature. That and private sector getting involved was something very progressive. And we would have loved to see how they could probably implement that and share public documents around the regulation for school infrastructure to make sure that school communities as well are able to form part of holding government and different entities, whether it's the private sector, because we do know that schools are built by implementing agents, which are also falling short of being able to do their job. So all of these things lie in an existing mechanism and system that is in place. It needs different departments and Angie herself and her ministry to take up the role and the power that's vested in the regulation that they've been fighting. This is the thing, though. I don't believe she's powerless. She hasn't given the regulation space to breathe. So this is an example of why I say this. And the High Court in Limpopo ordered, and this is through the Michael Komape case, ordered the province of Limpopo to give them an audited report of their plan to fix infrastructure in the schools. Limpopo for a while was first with the number of unsafe sanitation conditions in schools. The department, the MEC of Education in Limpopo, together with Angie Motshekga, came back with a report to the courts to say, look, we'll start fixing school sanitation in 2026. That's a good 10 years after the deadline of the norms and standards that already exist. And this is a regulation that her ministry put together. So I don't think she's given it time. She said explicitly, using her own mouth, the DBE can't afford to fix schools within the stipulated deadlines or timeframes of the norms and standards for school infrastructure. Now, that's a different thing to sort of, I don't know, admit, right? But it's different when you're also fighting in court and using copious amounts of monies to fight school communities that are saying we can't learn like this.
Well, one of the
I
arguments,
think she's powerless.
one of the
I think
arguments,
she has to use the regulation in the way that it stands and use the entire state, if anything.
One of the arguments that she made one of the arguments she made at that briefing the other weekend was that she depends a lot on other people, like Treasury. Treasury has to allocate the funds and looks at everybody else and says, this is what we can afford to give you this year and the next year and so on. She also said that she depends on other people like Public Works to do what they are required to do. Then I think that the argument of powerlessness then comes from there. And I remember asking her at that briefing that why aren't you resolving these issues given the court challenges you faced at cabinet, for example, where the president sits and every other minister sits. She said she couldn't do that, and that's not because she can't get her way. It's just how this animal that is called cabinet functions, and with the resources at the country's disposal, the finance minister will tell you that we can only give you so much.
I mean, then it's a sad day if we're going to sit today and have a conversation around the capabilities and the political will of different government departments. We have to, in our lifetime, always argue for a capable state. When you think of a parastatal and the things that Sunroll and various other parastatals in the country have already done, we can't shift the narrative away into private and parastatal-like type units or initiatives every time the government isn't able to deliver on the promises that it's made or the commitment that it's meant to deliver on. We need to push back against that narrative at all costs. And what I'm trying to argue to you is that regardless of her experience of cabinet, I mean, we've sat in many portfolio committee meetings, very progressive bunch of people that want to see school environments feel and look better. So outside the lack of political will, right, I also do think if she'd spend half their energy she does on fighting equal education and other such social movements and school communities, but investing time and energy and space in making sure that government departments meet and intersect at various levels to make these things happen, we'll be having a different conversation. So, for example, we were invited to an Indaba with the DPME probably about a year and a half ago. And one of the things that people were citing, and this is not parliamentarians or MPs or bureaucrats, these are the people that do the hard and dirty work, the labor. And they were saying it isn't actually difficult to get departments to work together. Because once you know someone else in that department and you know what their trait is, it's easy to see where your programs and your projects correlate, and working together becomes that much easier. So you have to ask yourself the question, what is actually the issue here? Okay. I feel like it's a lack of political will, or a sense of not wanting to take on that responsibility because it's been given to her. And this is what I want you to also note, that before July last year, the part in the norms and standards that spoke to who has the power to convene these different departments wasn't clear or didn't stick. And that's why we called it an escape clause, in essence. And that's been sort of, that's been fixed. And the person who comes in, whether it's Angie or someone else, in the next term, needs to be able to use the power that they've been given in that sense. And if it's a state compulsion, it means the president is just as responsible in making sure that these schools are built. And sanitation, and plain pit latrines in particular, are not eradicated in the next 3 years, but all of that work is done today to make sure that when people go to school or young people attend school, they don't, I mean, there's like a serious lack of dignity there or an unconducive learning environment. And this applies as an experience for learners and teachers.
Okay, that's where we're going to leave it. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Noncedo Matubetube from Equal Education coming through to us live from our Cape Town studios.